Hello there, everybody, and I am here to rank, for no reason whatsoever, the best roguelites of the decade. That's right, it's going to be a very exciting thing. I'm mostly doing this because I just kind of felt like it seemed like it'd be a fun thing to do. So if you're one of the 3.5 people watching, congratulations, you're in for a rough ride. Or nice ride, whichever you prefer. You know, I guess it really depends. Some people like smooth rides, some people like roller coasters. I hate roller coasters, but that's not the point. I have not included literally every single roguelite on here. I've mostly included the ones that I've played enough to where I feel I have a good enough of a viewpoint on them, if that makes sense. But most of the big roguelites are on here, as well as some that you've probably never seen before in your entire life. So we're just going to go down the list here. Tiers are pretty self-explanatory. S is best to best. A is really, really good, but not like God tier. B is a solid game. C is just okay, and D is, I don't really care for it. So we'll just start from the beginning here. 20XX. I'm torn between C or B tier. It's Mega Man the Roguelite. It's good at what it does. But to me, there just wasn't enough variety. Even after the game came out and was fully released, there just wasn't enough variety to keep me going after like 10, 15 hours. I don't remember getting that much out of it. And you kind of figure out the formula of the game pretty quick. It's mostly just figuring out like the boss patterns and how to abuse certain parts of levels. Again, it's good, but I'm putting everything at high standards here. So I would just say it's, as a game, you know, it's good, but it doesn't do enough special. But if you really like Mega Man, it's sweet. Catacomb Kids. Catacomb Kids is probably one of the hardest games on here. It's pretty difficult and has a lot of nuances that you don't really see when you first play it, which goes with a lot of roguelites, but I think Catacombs is especially the case. There's a ton that this game does not tell you, and discovering all that stuff and all the unique ways to overcome obstacles, defeat enemies is really neat. You can get tons of hours out of this game. For me, the game was a bit too obscure for me. I still enjoyed it, and I feel like if I had, like, you know, someone to do seeded runs with or something, we were both confused, then I'd probably get more time out of it. But just playing it solo, I think if for one of the rare cases, and this is rare for me because I usually love challenging games, but I think it was a bit too punishing, because there were times when I would just make like one mistake or one silly thing would happen, and it would just, a chain reaction would happen, and I would die. But the joy of discovering like how to using certain spells and different ways to overcome obstacles, and just, it was definitely one of the most fun roguelites when it came to discovering things. Actually, no, pretty much I'm looking at the rest of these games, and that's kind of a joy of, that's kind of one of the main things of roguelites. Anyways, it's a good game. It's C tier for me. I don't even know if it's out yet. It might still be in early access, I don't know, but it's only made by one guy though, which is impressive. Anyways, this is gonna take like 10 billion years. I need to speed it up. Cryptark. Cryptark is like what would you call it? A 360 degree, like you move in all directions, but it's kind of like a shooter, a dual stick shooter, if you will. You basically go in these ships, complete certain objectives that are relatively the same every time. Usually it involves eventually killing this generator, and to kill that generator you have to go and kill other things first, like the security or the shields and whatnot, and you kill robots and so on. Cryptark is solid, but I honestly, it's also a C tier. I might order these later. I know they're all C tier so far. Don't worry, it's gonna change. We just got all the C tiers at the beginning. Cryptark was just, it did not have enough variety. Even less, like 20XX had more variety than Cryptark. Cryptark got really samey really fast. And the aesthetic was good until you realize that every ship looks the exact same. It's all this dark green and like black aesthetic, and there was just, you got really sick of looking at the game after like a few hours because everything just looked the same. The variety in the spaceships and the enemies. There was only like a few enemy types in the whole game. What it made up for in the lack of variety was really solid shooting, really fun weapons, but that was it. I mean, I'm putting things at such high standards here that I'm almost considering putting it D tier, but for what it does, it's really good for like that short time you play it, but I mean, for roguelites, you tend to want to play them longer. But I can't see many people gain like a lot of time out of Cryptarch because there's just not enough going for it. So yeah, it's maybe at the bottom of C or top of D tier. It's fine, but it doesn't do anything super special to stand out. Crypt of the Necromancer, I didn't get as much time out of it as I thought I would. In fact, I only got like 20 something hours or something, 30. And it just, I don't know, it didn't stick with me. The formula was cute, but I wasn't like as critically like, oh my god, Crypt of the Necromancer is amazing like everyone else is. Obviously, it has a very unique battle system, and it executes it really well. But again, the variety just wasn't there for me. It mostly comes down to how much you love that rhythm combat system. And critically, I would consider put it A tier. For me, I think it deserves... I'm going to put it B tier for me. But if I had to put it what I think it deserves, I would maybe put it A tier. I don't know. I think I would put it B tier as well. Again, it's really solid, but I think it just needs more. But that combat system, and of course the music in that game. Danny Baranowski, my dude, you makes killer tunes. And of course the Cadence of Hyrule is technically also roguelite, and I could have put that on here as well. I think they both kind of fit in the same boat though. Cadence of Hyrule I think is even has less like replayability. I mean, I played that game through once and I was done with it, but Crypt of the Necromancer is good, great music. Art's great, but it just didn't have enough going in for me, I guess. I don't want to overly analyze all of these. Darkest Dungeon is easy A tier. I think I have like 150 hours out of this, which there are some people who probably have over 1,000. This game is loved by many. Every game on here might have the best art style of any roguelite I've ever seen. I really like the art style. I love the aesthetic of the Lovecraftian horror and all that spookiness going on. The permadeath is frustrating, for sure. The combat, all the strategies you can utilize, it's just all around really solid. Its main downside is it can get really grindy, especially in the like sort of mid to late game. There's a certain period in the game, especially if you're playing on the hard difficulties, where the game gets really slow. Like progression feels really slow, which is definitely, that's the criticism most people will levy at Darkest Dungeon, is it gets grindy, and it mostly comes down to how much you like the combat. And I like the combat more than than some other games on here. It worked really well. All the strategies you could employ made the combat loop last a while. And again, great art, great music. I like it. And it's gained a sequel apparently, which kind of a weird game for a sequel. I'm guessing it's just going to be Darkest Dungeon but more, which is fine by me. Dead Cells is weird because I love the combat, but I don't like everything else basically. I shouldn't say that, but I don't know, I got sick of Dead Cells really quick. Like pretty much, like I got as much time in Dead Cells as I did like Cryptarch, and that's not like, and I'm not trying to like bash Cryptarch or anything, but I think it might be like one of my least played games on here. Dead Cells just, again, it was really repetitive for me. Dead Cells, what I want Dead Cells to be is not a roguelite. If Dead Cells was like just a structured game, like a structured Metroidvania, handcrafted levels and all that, I think I would have loved it. But because it was a roguelite, I just didn't like it. I think it was the level design, honestly. The level design just felt it felt randomly generated, which obviously, like with a lot of roguelites, that's the case, but with Dead Cells, it just stuck out so much, and the combat just couldn't carry it for me. A lot of the times, the combat felt like run past a bunch of enemies to make it to a door, or every enemy is like super easy until a bomb hits you, and then like I remember like just tearing through the enemies until I get to the boss, tear through that boss, and then eventually I would find something new, and then start to have I don't know. I think it deserves B or A tier, but for me it's that's gonna if this was watched by a lot of people, this would anger people. I can't put it D tier. I can't justify putting D tier. It definitely deserves at least C tier, even for me. I think for me, it like for how much I got out of it, it would be D tier, which it's still a good game. Don't get me wrong. For me, it just got very samey really quickly. Dicey Dungeons, also a good game. If the game's on this list, then I like it. Okay, Dicey Dungeons is the one game that's not really the case. I didn't really play it much. There's a lot of RNG involved in a lot of time. You could formulate a lot of good strategy, and of course there was still a lot of skill, but for me, the combat didn't really click with me, and that's about all we're going to go on that. Dungeons of Dreadmore. Dungeons of Dreadmore is a really weird one. I'm going to put it as B tier. This, of course, came out way back. Did it even come out this decade? Hold on. I didn't actually... Because this is supposed to be games of roguelites of the decade. 2011. Okay, yeah, so barely. It barely came out this decade. Dungeons of Dreadmore is a game you could spend a really long time talking about. I mean, that goes with any of these, but there's a lot of stuff in Dungeons of Dreadmore, and a lot of it is just kind of there. You don't really need to pay attention to it. It has a ton of different specs and abilities, and it's fun to mess around with until you realize only a few specs are really worthwhile taking if you want to win. But of course, that's not entirely the point. A part of it is, doing random builds and stuff like that. But I only ever beat this game once, and that was when I purposely took all the specs that I thought were really good. That game is hard. If you actually want to win, it is flipping hard and takes forever to finish. But it is a roguelike of the true style. I think it stands the test of time. Not the best art in the world, but good humor, tons of silly items. Could have used a little more, I don't want to say substance, maybe. I feel it is definitely missing something. It was great for its time. It's still great today, but it doesn't have as much, I guess, unique stuff to like discover. Because a lot of the stuff you're discovering is just random items and stuff, but there's not really any like specific mechanics. Like you get the gist of the game pretty quick. There's not a lot to master, I say, even though I only beat the game once. Anyways, it's a good game. It's a good game. FTL, for me, it's a C tier, but that's just because the combat just wasn't my style. Which, it might seem like I'm saying that a lot, but trust me, we have a lot of games left. FTL probably deserves A tier. Like, critically, it probably would go here, because at what it set out to do, it was great. The way they made the combat, and at its time, it was just amazing, and a lot of people still play it today. For me, it's a C tier. That's just for me. Critically, it definitely deserves A tier, maybe S tier for some. But I didn't really play it enough to justify it, but I had to put it on here. It's one of the most notable roguelites ever. Gungeon. Gungeon's either A or S tier. It mostly comes down to how, I'll put it in, it's either top of A tier or bottom of S tier. In terms of the raw combat, moment-to-moment combat, it's definitely like tied to as for one of my favorites in the game. I like playing bullet hells in general. I like dodging, I do also like rolling, and I like guns. And this game has a lot of those. It's extremely colorful, the art is amazing, the different paths you can take in the game are great, all the characters are cool, the bosses are amazing, the enemies are great. It's just, every moment in Gungeon is just satisfying. All the guns, well, not all of them, but the synergies they added later in the game, like the game had problems on release with the balance. And the fact that you had to not use your guns because basically you had to save them for the bullet hell or whatever. But now it's basically a perfect game. Like, I can't really think of any genuine flaws with it. Without going super nitpicky. It's just, yeah, I think it does deserve S tier. I think it probably is one of the best roguelites ever made. And yeah, Enter the Gungeon. It came out, and everyone thought it was going to be great, and it did turn out to be amazing. So, very good. Hades, the latest game to come on this list, only came out on Steam in December 2019. So, extremely recent, right at the end of the decade. You barely made it, Hades, and technically it's not even out yet. It's in early access, so it might. But I wanted to put it on here. In terms of combat, this game is stupendous. Amazing combat. This sort of hack and slash, very fast-paced and skill-based. The more you play it, the more you sort of learn how to do different builds and how to work towards certain builds. You master the different weapons. In terms of every game on here, it definitely has the best narrative. It's like that, or maybe, nah, I wouldn't. Darkest Dungeon is the best like aesthetic, maybe, but I don't know. Hades is really good aesthetic too, but I think it actually has a genuine narrative going on in it, which makes sense because it's made by Supergiant Games, which that developer just makes gold whenever they make a game. But yeah, Hades. The main thing that puts it down, I think, is it could use more unique rooms. I think obviously most rooms should be combat, but I feel like it'd be nice if there's more, like maybe some. More kind of special rooms to like strategize mid-run that didn't just include buying stuff and like selling stuff. But it is an early access. They are still adding more stuff. I think it honestly deserves A tier. Even though I've only gotten like 10 hours it so far, I think I am gonna go back to it when they keep updating it. And it also has a really good system to like make the game harder after you've beaten it in this like heat gauge, where it can make you can choose what things to make hard. You can make the enemies hard, you can make traps do more damage, etc, etc. All the weapons are cool. Almost all the weapons are cool. Enemies are great, art style is great, narrative's great. It's amazing. It's a really good game. Into the Breach. Into the Breach, and its design is super good. Not a game I thought I would like, but it just executes. It's like a top-down grid-based game where you have a certain number you have like 3 mechs or so, and you can move them a certain number of spaces. You have to kill the aliens and stop them from destroying buildings and stuff. Sort of XCOM-y, maybe. I'm just trying to think of things to compare it to, but I'm gonna put it B tier. The design of this game is great. All the different mechs are really cool, the different teams. The main problem I have with, I feel like I'm trying to come up with problems more than positives. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe it's just because I'm better at, but I don't know, I can't honestly find much problems with it to Breach. I think the only problem you could say it has is that once you figure out sort of the formula of the game, so to speak, and the flow, and the certain like cracks and strategies you can implement, the game becomes solvable in a way. But I'm also not very good at it, so that wasn't hugely a problem for me. But once you start to play it a bit, it doesn't take long, I would say, before it starts to get a little more solvable. But in terms of design, it's still really good. I like it. Monolith is a roguelike, probably in my opinion. Yeah, it's the most underrated roguelite ever made, and I would say. For me, it's an S tier, and what can I say? It's basically a roguelite with like a very old school, like an old school shooter aesthetic. You know, if you play it for 5 seconds, you'll know what I mean. It's kind of like, you know, Cryptark or whatever, in that, you know, you can move 360 degrees. I just like it more than every way compared to like Cryptark, for example, which is by far the reason why that game's so much lower. Monolith, the music is amazing. I love the music of this game. I'm looking at all the roguelikes here, all the games on here, and I think it has my favorite soundtrack out of every game here. And that's saying something, considering Crypt the Necrodancer is on here. The combat is just right up my alley. It's not up a lot of people's alley. Actually, I think a good way to describe it would be think like a old school shoot 'em up, and combine it with the Binding of Isaac. That's actually a good way to put it. And I don't know, I just really like everything about it. Like a lot of roguelikes, there's more under the surface. They've just recently, like out of nowhere, came out with an actual expansion, which added a lot of cool stuff. All the bosses are amazing. The music is stupendous. I know I'm just repeating myself here, but I think it's a shame this game didn't get more attention than it did. Maybe it's because at its core it's a shmup, and shmups are inherently kind of niche, especially these days. But I love this game. Even though I don't have that much time in it, compared to like Gungeon or whatever, I think I'm steadily gonna play it like every other week, especially because the expansion came out. I did stop playing it for a while, but it got breathed new life into it. So Monolith, it's super good. I love it. I think it's one of the best roguelites. Critically, it's probably not one of the best roguelites ever, but for me, it scratches what I've like that shmup, because I do like shmups, but only when they're super good. And this actually made a roguelike shmup work. Tons of variety. It's stupendous. Noita is really... God, I'm at 20 minutes. What am I doing? Noita is at A tier, I think. It's in early access as well, which is kind of funny. Both Hades and Noita are early access, and yet they're A tier. Noita is such an interesting game. Watch like even if you watch an hour with it, it's like maybe more so than any other game on the list. It has so much underneath the surface. There's so much to discover in this game. It's ridiculous. The engine this game is made where every pixel is simulated, but the stuff you can do with creating your own wands is just absurd. There's just so much weird things to do in this game. Like the actual main goal, like of just getting underground, because there's other stuff you can do in the game as well that isn't just the main goal. But the main way to complete the game is just getting down to like the last floor and being the boss. It's pretty simple. You just keep going down, fight enemies, get new wands, get new potions, and get upgrades. But the formula is just... there's so much there. The things you can do with your wands, hitting stuff with your spells is just really satisfying. All the different upgrades, all the different synergies, like synergies in this game are... if you can make some crazy synergies if you look for them. I think it honestly deserves A tier. It's like top of B tier, bottom of A tier. Mostly because I did kind of get a little bored of it after a bit. The formula didn't keep going for me, but you know, I can keep saying that about every game here. The game just says so much underneath the surface. And by the way, this game, if this game had co-op, that'd be amazing. Though I don't know if the engine simulating all this stuff for one person is probably hard enough. Jeez, but Noita is a gem that came out of absolutely nowhere. Like, that game just randomly appeared on the Steam new releases one day. Same with Monolith, actually. Both those games were games that I had never heard of and just saw them on the Steam new releases, and I just clicked on them like, huh, this game looks cool. For a rare time, I'll buy it without knowing anything about it. Oh my god, it's amazing. So yeah, Nuclear Throne. Definitely one of the old school roguelikes. Been out for a while. It's B tier for me. Honestly, if this game wasn't 30 FPS, I would have considered playing A tier, but that really, really holds it back. If the game was smoother, then And like many roguelites, more than meets the eye, but not a whole lot. It mostly comes down to you beat the game. You get eventually, you get good enough at the game to where you can beat it like once every run, like pretty much almost every run. If you get the mastery of dodging and knowing what the enemies do. And then it's just a matter of looping as much as you can, because there's no definitive end to the game. Once you beat the throne, you loop, and then you loop again, and you loop again. Unless you go for... There's technically an end you can go for after you loop, which is killing the cop boss. That's technically the final boss. But, you know, if you keep looping, there's other new bosses as well, so... It is a very unique gameplay loop in that regard, and the guns are satisfying, which it's, you know, that's what the game's about, shooting stuff. But if I were to choose between playing Nuclear Throne or Gungeon or Monolith, because they're all, you know, top-down shooters technically, I would choose Gungeon or Monolith like every time over Nuclear Throne. Nuclear Throne is still very good in its own regard. I feel Gungeon and Monolith just do everything I want, but better. So, that's no knock against Throne. Gungeon and Monolith both came out a lot, like many years after Throne. So, Isaac Rebirth. That's an easy S tier. Here's the thing. I didn't play Afterbirth Plus. I played Afterbirth and then... I got Afterbirth, and then I installed Anti-Birth, which was the super good fan-made expansion, and I never got Afterbirth Plus. So I didn't... Because I know one of the criticisms that's levied at Rebirth, because I made this list after, watching a certain other list, you can probably guess. Or you can't, no one needs to know. But I know the game definitely does have a lot of fluff. It has a lot of items that don't need to be there, a lot of pills that don't need to be there. If you just cut out a lot of that stuff, it would probably be better for it. The game needs some items that don't do much, because otherwise every run would be super easy. I mean, you already have people out there doing like 100 win streaks, 200 win streaks, even with those items. So if you cut out too much fluff, the game would be way too easy. But I think Anti-Birth, technically, I'm reviewing like Rebirth, Afterbirth, Anti-Birth. It's kind of weird, because I'm not reviewing Afterbirth Plus, which is technically the latest version of the game, but it's also just an expansion. I don't know, man. Don't look at me like that. Anti-Birth just perfected it. The gameplay loop of Anti-Birth and the different paths you can take is just super good. Co-op in that game is also really, really enjoyable. I mean, the strategies you have to do in that game, there's some good stuff. There's definitely a lot of stuff you can implement. The moment-to-moment combat's cool. Without the synergies, of course, synergies is a big thing about this game. And if I were to compare its combat though to Gungeon, Monolith, Hades, Noita, I would say the combat's not as good. The thing that keeps Isaac going so strong, I think, is all the synergies, because the synergies are much more apparent to Isaac than any other game on this list, I would say. Well, except like Noita maybe, but Isaac, the synergies come a lot more naturally. I think that's what makes it so interesting. So, and of course, Isaac's just special for a lot of people. It's one of the original roguelikes. When Rebirth came out, it was amazing, and even to this day, it's still good. So, I don't need to go on and rant about Rebirth. I need to end this video before it hits 30 minutes, but I probably won't. Risk of Rain 2, that's a C tier for me. Maybe D tier. A lot of people love this game. I don't really get it. It got pretty samey really quick. It's kind of just a third-person shooter where you shoot stuff and whatnot, and you get items that modify yourself. And you can get synergies, but the items are... of course, items are random for all these lists, but synergies aren't as easy to create, I guess. And it just got so... It was just too repetitive for me. That's basically the gist of it. I think I actually like the Risk of Rain 1 more, so we'll just go straight to that, which is basically Risk of Rain 2, because all Risk of Rain 2 is basically made the game 3D, and had, that was basically it. It made it a 3D shooter instead of a 2D shooter. I just like Risk of Rain 1 a little better. It is basically the same game, but 2D, I'm not gonna lie. So they're honestly not that far off, but I just like I like the camera, or I like the 2D sort of action feel of Risk of Rain 1 a little more. But I don't know, honestly, Risk of Rain 1 might be just top of C tier, Risk of Rain 2 might be bottom of... Or Risk of Rain 2 might be bottom of B tier, Risk of Rain 2 might be top of C tier. Let's actually organize these a little bit here. Yeah, it seems it's fine. We'll get to the rest later. But yeah, I don't have a lot to say about Risk of Rain, honestly. You play it and you pretty much know what you get. It could use more stuff to, I guess, discover in the game, because there's not a lot of that. It's basically you unlock the characters and then whoop-de-dang, you're good. So yeah, but the combat's fun and all the classes are cool and unique. So Rogue Legacy. Rogue Legacy is a game that when it came out, it was amazing, and I think more so than any other roguelike of the decade. After a while, people were like, Rogue Legacy wasn't really that good. And I think it's just because its mechanics have been hugely overshadowed by every other game on this list. at the time, I was like maybe it was like this game was cool, but even when it came out and I was playing it, I didn't think it was amazing. I just thought it was like good. And definitely over time, I, like many people, kind of had the same thought where I was like, it's not that special. It's still a good game, but you play it once. I had no desire to play it again, even back then. So, yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't do a whole lot by today's standards, and it's just back then it was innovative. That was the main thing about it. Was the system of the gameplay loop was innovative, but the combat wasn't innovative. There wasn't a whole lot of secrets going on. There wasn't really many synergies. Mostly just hit stuff and persistent upgrades to make yourself stronger. Because that was one of the pioneers of persistent upgrade roguelites. But yeah, it doesn't really do a whole lot by anymore. And I don't really like persistent upgrades in roguelites. Unless they're like minor. I prefer just the more you play, the more stuff you unlock, like Monolith or Isaac and so forth. Of course, it can work, especially if it's like ingrained into the core of the game, like Darkest Dungeon and whatnot, Hades. But yeah, Slay the Spire, easy S tier. My second most played roguelike on here. I'm gonna organize this a little bit. Yeah, close enough. The design of Slay the Spire is so good. Like that, the design of that game is amazing. That gameplay loop is just perfect. Like, I don't really know, honestly, what to say about Slay the Spire. If you play it and like it, you know what it is. You can't make a roguelike card game like better than Slay the Spire. I can't see how you could do it, aside from give it good art, because yeah. Slay the Spire, I don't like its art. I think it has pretty bad art, to be honest. And the music also is pretty not good, or it's just mediocre. Which is funny that I'm saying both those things, but it's still S tier. That just goes to show how strong the game mechanics of this game are. It's just designed really well. I don't really know where else to go from that. So, Slay the Spire. It's good. It's a good game. I like it. Let's see. Hold on. There we go. I want to at least organize my S tier. Maybe like that. No. God, this is hard. It doesn't matter. Spelunky, also S tier. I'm not organizing them at this point. It's too much work. You get the gist of it. It's mostly organized. Also in S tier, I know at the beginning there everything was going in the lower tiers. Now you'll see there's a lot of stuff in S tier, but I think every game on this list definitely deserves it. All of my S tiers I'm like definitely sure about, which is why. But they're also the games I hold the most value to, which is why I'm like I should order them properly. But whatever, they're all S tier. That's what you need to know. Spelunky. What do I need to say about Spelunky? It was an amazing game at its time. Still is. Again, the design of that game is incredible. That the hidden path is super good. The moment-to-moment platforming is just incredible. I've been saying way too much this video, probably because I don't really talk to myself with a microphone anymore, with good reason. But I don't really need to go on a rant about Spelunky. Everyone knows how good Spelunky is. Most of the games in S tier, everyone knows how good they are. So there you go. That's the best roguelites of the decade, or pretty much all the roguelites I've played of the decade. All ordered. Pretty good stuff here. I'm trying to see if there's anything I would really change. I'm sure after this list I'll want to change like something. We have I guess I can try to order it. So, FTL, Cryptarch, Dead Cells. I think I pretty much already did. Nuclear Throne I would put like up there. Into the Breach we'll put there. A tier. I'll put Noita. Something like that. Isaac, Slay the Spire, Monolith, Spelunky, Gungeon. Maybe like that. Those top, again, these 5 are the hardest. All the S tiers are there. I just hold the most value in. Anyways, I have no idea why I did this. Chances are no one's watching at this point. Chances are the view time in this video was like 5 minutes. But hey, if you're somehow here, hope you enjoyed. These are good games. Yeah. Now I just gotta do best anime of the decade, best video games of the decade, let's see, best food products of the decade, best electrical appliances of the decade, that's a good one, best French fry types, waffle fries, pretty good, best tissue brands. Well, I don't know what I'm doing. Have a good day. Happy New Year, that's what I meant to say.